Sunday. If they all come on the same Sunday, we're going to be really in deep doo-doo. But welcome. My name's Robert. I'm really... Oh, hi. You're back. G'day, mate. How you going? How wonderful of you to be here. And I am always extremely grateful for the privilege of sitting in a seat and sharing the Dharma with you. Hello to those of you joining us on the internet. I know you're out there. Should you not know this, there are devices for those of us with hearing impairment back there. There's 3 more up there. They really are good ones, and they're very clear, so if that would be useful, please do. And those of you sitting up here, the acoustics are the worst in the room there, if you have trouble hearing. So I'd like to invite you, if you wish, to just remain silent. But if it would be useful to you, take a moment to turn to your neighbor and just introduce yourself and say hello for a second. Don't get carried away. It's nice to connect, isn't it? Except in those moments when it's not. So I'd also like to thank those of you that came. We had a once-a-month introductory session, and for those of you that stayed, I'm glad you're here. And I'm fresh back from Brighton Bush Hot Springs and a retreat, and I don't know if you'd call it getting carried away, but there was a fellow there that had a 12-string guitar, and it's nice, isn't it? Makes a lot of sound. It does exacerbate the mistakes, though, so have to be particularly playful with it. So I invite you to join me in singing the refuges. The refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. The Buddha is that in us which is awake. There was a living human being 2,600 years ago or so who woke up. And his waking up was of such a magnitude, and his capacity of teaching, and the times were just right, that an unbroken line of teacher-student teaching comes to us now. And millions of people have practiced what we're going to do here and found it really useful, leading to more happiness and less suffering and more love and compassion. And it would seem as though we have a need of those things, does it not seem? And then refuge in the Dharma, which is the way things actually are. So that means when we do that, our meditation is to just be here with what is rather than to try. It's not always a self-improvement process. It's just, I can wake up to things as they are, as unstable as they are, with as much love and compassion and joy as there is. And then refuge in the Sangha is the refuge in community, that you can't really meditate for long without a community because it's so hard. So I'm glad you're here today. I invite you to come back and see how the tuning is on this. We'll see. It takes forever to tune a 12-string. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Again with feeling. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. Dharma, I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in the Sangha, the energy of mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Yes. We have Buddha. So, now we can do what human beings have done for thousands of years. Nothing. Stop. Sit. Abandon the human doing and become a human being. To just be here. So what to do? Comfortably upright. Noticing how alive the body is. Noticing that it's alive and where the body touches the chair or the floor. There's a little quote from Alan Watts. This feeling of being lonely and very temporary visitors in the universe is in flat contradiction to everything known about humans and other living organisms in the sciences. We do not come into this world. We come out of it as leaves come out of a tree. As the ocean waves, the universe peoples. Every individual is an expression of the whole realm of nature, a unique action of the total universe. This feeling of being lonely and very temporary visitors in the universe is in flat contradiction to everything known about humans and all other living organisms in the sciences. We do not come into this world. We come out of it, as leaves come out of a tree. Every individual is an expression of the whole realm of nature, a unique action of the total universe. You belong here. You are the earth breathing. As in the tree, there is the cambium layer of 1 or 2 cells thick where the life occurs. That's you, that's us. we are carrying the flame of life and consciousness at this moment. So why not be awake to it? We could be, and often are, lost in our fears and fantasies and hopes and shame and dread. But we could become aware of that, and in that, we're here. So notice, please, the life in your face, in your eyes. You are alive. You're alive, and one way that manifests is that the breathing is happening. So why not come home to this breathing and to be here in it, to be aware of the beginning of this breath, aware of how the breath, how the chest and abdomen and back expand, and then how they contract, and then how the breath ends. Really identical to the way the sun comes up and crosses the sky and then disappears, or the seasons come and then go, the tides come and go. And we use the breath to provide a kind of stability and a place of being aware, a place of being awake. A place to sharpen the concentration and come alive. Please don't battle with your mind. We already have plenty of war in the world, more than enough. Mindfulness that illuminates worry and planning and fear and so on could be called the most powerful thing in the universe. Because when it illuminates the wandering, there is freedom. That's awakening. And in that spaciousness, it's possible, if you choose, to come back to breathing. But it doesn't need to be done with any violence. Any violence doesn't work. It's done with true love. The mind is like this. Back to the breath. Noticing how each breath has a beginning. It comes out of nowhere. And then it rises to fullness, and there's a sort of pause, and then exhalation begins. And then it's over. The weather outside is exactly as it is. It may well be different in a half an hour or this afternoon, but it is in this moment as it is. The weather inside is also as it is. In this collection of humans, there's probably almost every mental experience happening. From great bliss and concentration and delight to just barely holding on by the fingertips from breaking out sobbing or screaming or because that's who we are. That's how the mind is. And each of us has a remarkable responsibility and capability to become conscious of how it is right now. And in that becoming conscious of it, we make our greatest contribution to world peace and to love and kindness. In accepting the moment as it is, we begin or continue to inhabit reality. And in this reality, can become creative with our thoughts and our emotions. We could think a kind thought for ourselves or another person. We could turn our awareness toward our own suffering and see how compassion arises. Or the suffering of another and see how compassion arises. And in order to arrive here in the present moment, we have our dear friend, the friend of a lifetime, this breathing in and breathing out. if the mind happens to be quiet right now, maybe it's in great ease. Maybe there are few wandering minds. What a perfect moment to observe the subtle mystery of things arising and passing away. Noticing how perhaps the entire body is a cloud of sensations, tingling, vibrating, warm, cool. Or maybe it's a moment to notice the very first stirrings of a thought before it ever quite thinks itself. Perhaps there's pain in the body. No doubt there are more than several people in this room who have constant chronic pain. And so we use our capacity of concentration and awakeness to turn directly toward that pain, to embrace it with a love that is utterly complete. To study the sensations themselves and the suffering that comes from the mind resisting it. And noticing how sometimes the resistance goes away and there's just spaciousness and acceptance, ease. we exist in this present moment. The future's not yet, and the past is gone. And we talk about, I'll meditate for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes or half an hour or whatever. But in truth, we only ever meditate for this moment. And so that means every time the mind wanders and awakening happens, we're starting over. It's one constant rebirth, one constant starting now. So please don't sweat it if your mind wanders a lot. In fact, every time it wanders, the conditions are created for another moment of waking up. How exquisite. Please acknowledge what the feeling experience of this moment is. Is it a moment of pleasure or displeasure or undecided? This moment is like this. It is as it is. What a relief it is to finally accept that. Please now invite awareness to notice the aliveness in your feet. And how is it that you do that? To let aliveness awaken in your knees and legs, in your buttocks, your back, your fingers and your hands and your arms, your chest, in the neck and the jaw and the lips, the cheeks and the eyes and the forehead, the scalp. This capacity of awareness it's around us, it's with us like water is around fish, but we don't notice. But you can. You are. And please now bring awareness particularly into the region that we would each call my eyes. Notice there's a lot of life there. Maybe let your eyes roll around inside their beautifully lubricated sockets a bit. One direction then the other. Strange, isn't it? Huh. And then noticing the intention to allow the eyes to open, and then let them open slowly. They open and then seeing happens. There's nothing to do, it just does itself. Seeing and objects are born. And please notice your feeling tone or your sense of ease or wellness that you have now. And please very mindfully raise your hand if you feel more sane or relaxed or healthy than when you walked in. Notice the mood. Take a moment to look around. It's really worth looking. Isn't that weird? We sat here and directed awareness to the present moment for 40 minutes. Maybe it was the singing, I don't know. The guitar. Obviously the guitar. Thanks. So, why not do that for 45 minutes every day? Right? It's hard though, isn't it? We have this sense we're only worth something if we're working, or we're getting more, we're only secure if we're getting more news. That's a great delusion. Sanity varies inversely with the number of minutes spent on the news daily. Probably that's a true equation. So Jim is not here. Is that? I don't see Jim. Okay, good. I mean, it's fine. Good. Sorry, Jim. I didn't mean it. I hope he's doing something fun. Hope he's doing a grandparenty thing. Do you wish to do announcements, Avi? Okay, not quite yet. Let me say a couple of things first. Thanks. I'd like to invite you to stay, if you can, till noon. I'm giving the ultimate secret teaching this morning. And this is it. We've been waiting for it for years, and finally I'm going to... Everything changes. No, that's not it. It's actually a talk on Anatta, on the Buddhist teaching of, I don't like to say the word not self. I like more to say that the self is actually a process of the living universe. That's a more accurate statement, I think. So I'm going to talk about that. And have a couple of announcements I'd like to make. One is that my wife and I and the kids are going to New Jersey to be with her family over Thanksgiving, and we really need someone to stay with our dogs from the Tuesday to the Monday. And if that's something you might be able to do, please come and see me. I'm just back from Brighton Bush Hot Springs from a 5-day retreat, and there's another one on January the 6th, and it's about 2/3 full. So if you'd like to participate in that, it is time to sign up, because it was actually a brilliant move. I think it's about 10 years ago that I've taught a summer retreat at Brighton Bush for a long time, almost 30 years. But I had this brilliant idea. So my only real successful marketing idea ever, which was, when should I offer a retreat that people will really be driven to come? Right after New Year's. Right? People make resolutions, and I'm going to meditate, and that retreat, as many people as get in are turned away. So I invite you to come and make a resolution and start meditating. I have here, I got it working again, our magic iPad that is part of our donation system. And if it'll be back there at the back with the Donna bowl. And the way PIMC works is on your generosity. And the way your spiritual practice works is on your generosity. That the more we can do this letting go thing, the more free we are. So you can support PIMC through the Donna Bowl. You can also do it online. Preferably, there's an online monthly giving. The sustaining circle. No, stewardship circle. I'm so NPR focused. It's the sustaining circle, and that's a very helpful way for supporting the community. And what are we doing here? We're creating community. This is a spore that blew in from Asia. My training was started in India, and this is the leading edge of the Dharma blossoming in America. And you can help it. You can help keep the doors open. And very, very soon, we're going to be very specifically speaking about the project that will have those windows go away, and there will be a door there, which will be the upper end of the ramp system for getting people in who can't walk in. So that's coming very soon. So I think that's mine. Avi, you want to come up and do the official ones? Whichever you wish.
Testing. Good morning, Sangha. As he was giving those announcements there, I had this thought about what it must have been like when the Buddha was teaching 3,000 years ago, and he would give announcements. I was thinking would whoever put their, horse and cart over there by the edge of the garden, it's blocking the access way, could you please? So even though announcements are not officially a part of the Dharma, I suspect that they've always been there. All right. Maybe I'm just making myself feel better. I don't know. All right, so who is doing Dharma consults? Dharma consults. Okay. So Christine is doing Dharma consults. Could you raise your hand one more time? All right, so Dharma consultations, 20-minute slots where if you have an issue coming up in your existing practice, you want to start your practice that you haven't started yet, please see Christine. 12 o'clock, you can sign up there and back, or you can just buttonhole Christine while she's here. Let's see what else we got. So we have hospitality at the end of Robert's Dharma talk. Please come and join us and have some tea, have some num-nums and some whatever, and enjoy the benefits of community. The rest of this week, so we have a Sunday PM sit tonight, 6:30 to 8 p.m. here. On Monday tomorrow, we have a sit in Beaverton with Jim, 7:30 to 9 p.m., and of course this is on the website. We have, we have a Monday book group in the morning tomorrow. No, I'm sorry. We have a Monday book group tomorrow night here. That is one of the spiritual friends groups. Tuesday, we have a Tuesday AM sit, 9:30 to 11:30 a.m. We have a Tuesday PM sit, the Boundless Heart sit with Gary, 7 to 8:30 p.m. And then we have a Thursday sit, 7:30 to 9:15 p.m. All of this stuff is on the website. If you really enjoy what Jim does with his Qigong movement practice, most every week that he's here, he's doing one of his half-day retreats that's coming up on Saturday, 11/11, from 10 a.m. to 2. It is really wonderful. It would be really good for you to come. It's by donation, and you will get a lot out of it. I mentioned spiritual friends just a minute ago. It's not immediately obvious if you're new here, but we have a network of Kalyana Mita groups, which are spiritual friends groups, people who are like in a specific neighborhood or area of the city. They're able to get together in people's homes and visit with one another. They either discuss the Dharma or they have sits, and it is a really nice way of sort of exploring the path of the Dharma on your own without having to involve this big place and coming here every Sunday. So if you would like to see about either starting a Kalyana Mita group, because we could certainly have more, or joining one, please come and see me. Let's see. Robert, in his self-promotion, forgot to promote the fact that he has a Seattle retreat coming up on the 18th and the 19th. And I am sure that there are plenty of spots there. Now let's see what else we got. Volunteers, this is a community that is sustained by volunteerism. We take what we experience on the cushion and we take that off the cushion and we come in here and we have this beautiful place where we can practice actually while getting work done and being centered and being in community with other people who want to do the same. And it's a really fun thing to do, to be with other people, keeping this place feeling like home. So if you have some time and you would like to connect at a deeper level with this community, please come and see me. And I can connect you to Kirsten, our volunteer coordinator, who is apparently being very happy and traveling around Europe right now. So nice thoughts to Kirsten as she travels around Europe. She will be back soon. And then, again, not immediately obvious, we have a wonderful children's program here. If you have kids, and if you have escaped your kids today to come here, you don't need to escape your kids. You can bring your kids, and our teacher, Eric, would be happy to keep them entertained and learning some basic concepts of the Dharma while you're in here meditating. And then finally, I didn't say my name at first. For those of you who don't know, my name is Avi. Well, Robert said it, but I'll say it again. My name is Avi. I'm community coordinator here. My job is to connect you to this community in whatever way you want to be connected to it, whether that is through volunteering or accessing our programs, accessing other people, accessing a meditation practice. I have office hours Monday through Thursday in the morning. Please email me, call me, come and visit. I will serve you tea, and we can get to know one another. So you all have a blessed day. Take care.
I'm going to come over here for a moment and draw your attention to this photograph of Ruth Dennison. This was in the last 6 months of her life. She's my great teacher of 40 years, and she died a couple of years ago, but also our great benefactress. That PIMC exists because of her nourishing my teaching, but also her incredible generosity. I'll tell you this, it would be interesting when you come in. Out on the transom of that door, there's a sign that says Ruth Dennison Dhamma Dina Meditation Hall. And 2001? We bought the building in 2004. In 2001, she wrote the first check for $10,000, of which there were many. And with that check, she handed it to me and said, "Here, start a center." And I went, "Ack, I don't know how to do that." And she said, "I considered giving you this money DOD." And I went, "What?" She said, which meant delivery on death. But I thought I would prefer to see my name on something. So we got the setter a few years later, and then she came for the grand opening, and first thing I did was I brought her in the front door and said, well, there it is, see? So this is the Ruth Denison Dhammadina Meditation Hall. And I introduce her now because I want to channel her. She was trained in Asia, and it was at a time when Buddhism was coming to the West, and it was pretty rigid, pretty stiff. No one did movement. And she was actually castigated, mocked by the other teachers that, oh, you're having people move on your retreats? I mean, isn't it all about sitting and walking? Well, actually, for us householders in particular, we move all day long. So why not learn how to move mindfully? So with that in mind, please notice that you're sitting. Sitting posture. 4 great postures: sitting, standing, walking, lying down, and everything in between. And then notice how it is. You might imagine the room is suddenly filled with honey. You can still breathe, but it's thick. It's thick. Let yourself now notice what it will take to come to standing as you move through thick honey. So feel every gesture as you move, as you start standing up. Mindfulness of movement. It's complicated. And in Ruth-esque fashion, I'm just going to ask you, let's do follow the leader. And I'm going to move very simply. Be aware of your body as it moves. There's no way to do it wrong. Let your knees bend a bit. Exhale, and then coming up. Inhaling. Be aware of your arms, of your shoulders, your feet. Home in the body. When your mind goes to the past or future, come home. Just be here. This time let your eyes follow your hands up and let them reach up really high. And then again down to the side, exhaling. And let's let both hands reach way up to the right, and the weight coming to the right leg and foot. Breathing in, and then down. Let there be a little sigh. And then reaching way up to the left. And then a sigh. Up to the right. Up to the left. A teaching from another person. I can't remember his name. It's a long time ago. I was in Mendocino with 120 other men at an old CCC camp with Robert Bly and Michael Mead and James Hillman and the mythopoetic men's gatherings. It was there that I discovered it was okay to be a man. I've been raised to think men were really pretty crappy. And it was a bit of a problem because I happened to be one. It was quite a discovery. But But there was a fellow there who taught Aikido, and he taught us the jump down. And it's really a fun practice. You know, if you want to get ground, actually we shouldn't. There's a massage happening down there. Let me just demonstrate, but don't do it, okay? It's rather than jumping up, you jump down. Like that. And it's useful in downhill skiing too, of course. One does that a lot. But let's not do that to the poor massage person. Good thinking. All right, let's just do a little more hand movement. Turning out to the left and then to the right. And let's go fast. At the pace that suits your body. Let's not get the idea that I'm meditating, so therefore I have to always be slow. Aware of going to the left and the right. Don't do anything that hurts you, of course. Something I like to do is to imagine I'm throwing something over my right shoulder and then throwing something over my left. All right, let's let this come to stop. Boom, standing. From Ruth. Darling. Beginning with your right hand, let your hand begin to shake. And let it go a little berserk. And then let your arm become a little berserk. And your shoulder, but be mindful. You can be just as aware doing this as you can doing any other thing, like sitting. And now the left hand, let the right one stop, and then the left one. Notice if it's any different from the other one, but let it really shake itself out. And then both. Let's make a growl for fun. That was good. And then the torso. And then the butt. Be a dog. And then the right leg, and the left leg, and then both. And then the head. And then the whole body, however it would like to shake and jiggle and be mindful. Are you doing it right? Is there someone inside saying, you're not doing it right? Buzz off. All right, and then do a minute or two of stretching of whatever kind would be helpful for your body. And then we'll very mindfully find our way to sitting. We'll pull the plug, let the honey out of the room. Albums, favorites. Okay. Please join me in turning off your great distractor if you haven't already. I'm glad nothing came in on this while I was... Go away. There. Thank you. I've been involved since since earlier than that, but my first meditation retreat was January of 2000, no, of 1604. No, it was, just feels like that. It was 1971 in India. And it was there that I discovered that it was possible to work with consciousness. That it was possible to intentionally participate in one's evolution. After that, I went to York University and I was working in a master's in environmental studies, and I ran into Gestalt therapy. And then, poorly done, let me tell you. Was it grim? But it was the start of something. And the first classes in interpersonal communication training that I took, I didn't know it existed, that there actually were skills you could learn. But I've been involved in a reclamation project since then, which is the reclamation of Robert Beatty. Because he was so uptight and so frightened and so full of shame and so full of tears and so full of anger and so depressed and so pretending. And there's been many weeks, months of retreat and thousands of therapy sessions, I guess, and lots of body work and couples therapy. And it's been this reclamation project to set this person free, because he came out of childhood very tight and warped, and his parents did the very best they could. I mean, they really did. My dad once put it, well, we do the best we are, and they did. But there was depression and alcoholism and no overt violence. It was good. But I'm saying this because I thought of it while I was jumping around on the stage here. I had another layer became Anatta. Another layer became clear as not me at Brighton Bush. About 2 days into the retreat, maybe earlier than that, through no volition on my part, there came an awareness of it. I'm not going to be able to describe it very well, but there came an awareness that there was this field around me, sort of, that was my father. I attribute it to my father, but I think it was Catholic schools and life maybe, that was still constraining, don't be yourself. Don't be quite free. Right? You're going to do it wrong. Or it came up on the retreats. I've taken Ruth's example to quite some lengths. In the morning now, we meditate for 45 minutes, and then we dance for 45 minutes. And we let loose. We do rock and roll and Latin and drumming, and it's interesting. Some people come and they don't move much at first, but by the end of the retreat, they're just dancing like they haven't for a long time. Dancing as if no one was watching. Dancing like those 2 and 3 and 4 year. Isn't it great watching little kids dance? They just dance. So I became aware of this constraint. This. It was the second morning. It was around the music. There's always this fear. Oh, what if this is the wrong song? What if someone doesn't like this? What if this is too long? What if it makes it late for breakfast? There's this kind of. It's like a paranoid. Don't be too out of control. Don't just. Don't have too much fun. And it became more and more visible over a little teary now, interesting, over the course of the retreat. And as these things become visible, it becomes obvious, that's not me. That's malware. It's programming. It's how I was conditioned by my family and my culture. It's that which was passed down through the generations and which still was having a pretty substantial effect. I'm curious to see what will happen now. I have a lot of responsibilities and projects to work on, and I stall. It stalls. It's like avoiding the difficult thing, because what if I make a mistake? What if I try to get my taxes done? My wife Jennifer and I started filing, I think 3 years ago, we started filing jointly. She files on time. And the pressure to file on time got huge. I always got an extension. But no, she likes to file on time. It's a great thing. But why did I always stall? Why? It's always because what if I make a mistake? What if it doesn't work? What if it's this container. And it's very amorphous. But another layer of it just evaporated. I don't know, who knows if it will be permanent. But this morning, in guiding the meditation and in the movement, a layer of, you get in trouble. Or used to be also over my right shoulder were the great Burmese and Thai masters. And they'd say, oh man, who are you to be teaching the Dharma? And this is not the Dharma. And doing therapy over my left shoulder would be all the great master therapists who'd be saying, good God, you don't know what you're doing. And when that's happening, I could hardly see the people before me. Because I'm so busy with the shadows of the past. The Buddha's teaching on Anatta, not soul, not self, is a strategy that sets us free. It's not a doctrine. We don't have to say, I believe in Anatta. I believe in the one true teaching of Anatta. And that's no help. That's another idea. But when it becomes apparent, oh, that's one of these. I'm twisted like this and I can't act. Maybe I can't enter a relationship, or I can't get in touch with my emotions, or there's a particular emotion that I'm not allowed to touch. Or many of us, of course, none of us got out of childhood without significant small t trauma at least, and sometimes big T trauma. And in that, those were circumstances that happened that we didn't have the worldview or the space or the capacity energetically to deal with, and so we got caught, warped. Trauma through intrusion or trauma through neglect. If we're going to become free, we're going to see that traumatic, that locked downness, that being stuckness in one emotion or another, that's not who we are. The tears, oh my goodness, the tears that happened. There was a period, one several year period, there was a lot of rage. And then another, for a period, 10 years ago, there were lots of tears. Tears and tears and tears and tears. In body work, just tears and tears and tears and tears. And then that tear trove ran out. There can still be tears, but the leftovers were finally cried out. So the direction is to freedom, to being who we are. And what's revealed as we do that, according to the Buddha's teachings and experientially and observationally, I believe it's true. What's revealed is that we are so capable of loving and being compassionate. We can take so much delight in other people's happiness. And there's a quality of equanimity and ease in the world that, oh, this is how the world is. And it's an incredibly beautiful, astonishing, remarkable place, and there's a lot of really crappy things that happen in the world. But one lives more easily with that. These are those many of you probably recognize it, these are the Brahma Viharas, the abode of the gods. Love, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. And they're the natural outcome of realizing the truth of Anatta, not soul, not self, not neurotic mind. And one way to work with it is when we're caught up in something, however it is, to take our seat, to study it really closely. When I got a whiff of that on the retreat, this was very nebulous, but it was all around me. I took it to my meditation seat and I sat with it. And it's as though it was kind of emerging out of the fog, or it's an archaeological layer that awareness is just digging its way down. But through sitting with it, it became more and more clear, that's not me. I don't have to live in that particular box. I can actually be a little more joyful, or I can be a little less fearful. Because I'm not about to get, I'll give you the back of my hand. Remember that one? Or I'm no longer living in a family where there was a lot of tension and conflict between the parents, and that sort of osmotically you learn to keep it down. I know there was a conscious rule in our home, which was when Dad comes home, be quiet. We could be playing and laughing, and also I discovered this with my dad late in his life. I was growing and going to visit. They were in Montreal. I'd go to visit every now and then, once or twice a year. And I was trying to figure out and try to connect. And I insisted, it was the craziest thing. For several years, I insisted that he hug me. It's like hugging a telephone pole or something. And then I finally got it together. The last 2 years of his life, I didn't try to hug him. I shook his hand. I realized I could speak his language. And I shook his hand. He'd take me to the airport. And I'd shake his hand and I'd look into his eyes and I would see he was on the brink of tears. And then my mom had a bad stroke, and I discovered then that when he started to have tears, he would do this. Because crying, his box, didn't include crying. Because that would be, boys wouldn't cry, wrong. So, awakening to these personalities, we can become free of the unconscious patterns. And the remarkable thing that I already said, but I find it so beautiful, is that what that reveals is love. Love and joy and happiness and connection and caring for each other. Wow. Because that's our natural state. Wow. So, I have this favorite little diagram. You will recognize it, even from far away. Right? Every time a raindrop hits a lake, or you can do it with a cup of tea. I like to do that. Stick your finger in the tea and then lift your finger up and then let it drop down and watch. It always does this. It hits, and then it goes boop, and then and boop. And with a high-speed camera, it actually does it between 7 and 10 times. It's busy out there when it's raining. I think of that sometimes. Man, it's a lot of bouncing going on. So I use this. I love this as a metaphor for us, for me. That a few moments ago, a sperm and an egg came together, and you came into being. Is that not weird? I mean, what a strange way we come into the world. And even stranger is that in that process of fertilization, mitosis beginning, and then implantation in the uterus, and then birth, that consciousness came in. What? No one has the least idea where that consciousness comes from. Or, on the other end, not so long ago, I was with Ruth Dennison when she breathed out. Where'd she go? Don't know. But that which was the spark of her life did disappear. And we had a corpse, which we got to keep for almost a day. We carried her across the desert, and we chanted, and we put her, well, it was great. I had purchased 40 pounds of dry ice, so we had her on dry ice, and we sang, and we laughed, and we had a wonderful time around it. We had lots of tears. And then they took her away, and then a few weeks later, we had a cremation. We had a big ceremony, which you can see on YouTube. It's quite a ceremony, it's 3 hours of Dharma teachers talking about Ruth and our relationships with her. And then we took her and we put her in, we cut a cardboard box and we pushed her into the retort, and then I got to push the buttons. There's 3 buttons: ignition, preheat, and blast off. Quite something. Oh, and here on the altar, actually, and I invite you, if you're interested, where'd it go? Over here? Oh, it's over here. Great. This is, these are some cremains, as we call them, and you can actually turn the top off. You can look inside. It's bones. It's calcium. And Ruth would have been the first to say, "Darling, it's just matter." But it's kind of neat. You can actually see it's that went around posing as Ruth Denison. So, this droplet time. Oh, good. Just got pulled about 2 years before her death. Ruth wanted to plan everything, plan her memorial service. And we went to the mortuary where in the end we did the ceremony. And I was sitting there on a pew with her, holding her hand, and I said, "This is really a yucky setup. Because the next time I'm here, you will be over there in a casket, and I will be missing you." And she said, "That'll be a marvelous teaching in impermanence, won't it?" And it was, because that moment came, and of course then it went. So, Anatta. This is, I think, talk number 5 in a series of 25 on the entire course of the Eightfold Path. And the first one was about dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and the cause of dukkha is craving, and we want things to be different. And then there's the when we can see this clearly, the cause stops somehow. And then there's nirvana, which is the quenching of the suffering, because the craving goes away. The events may stay exactly the same, but there's no longer this fighting with reality, all the extra. And then the 4th ennobling truth is that of the Eightfold Path. And I had one talk on anicca, impermanence, and there's been, I forget what the others are. Did I do dukkha yet? Not dukkha, did I do karma yet? I don't think so. Anyway, did I? Yeah, okay, karma. So then, this is in the section about wise understanding. We live through a worldview. We have an hypothesis, usually unconscious, through which we see the world. So I wonder how many of these tangents to go on. I've been reading a very interesting book called The Dangerous Case of Donald Trump. It's the writings of 27 psychologists and psychiatrists on making sense of what's happening from a Western psychological point of view. And I read one of the articles recently that was talking about the impacts this is having upon some people. And what I realized was they've left out something, which was that when Barack Obama came to power, it affected a certain slice of American society really heavily. Gun sales went up and people were really freaked out. But we didn't look at that very compassionately, because one side was right and the other side was wrong. And it's so interesting to me that these worldviews create how we see things. So, worldview, The traditional worldview in which we swim is that of capitalist consumerist materialism. And that says, if I have enough goods, I'll be happy. If I can amass the goods, if I can avoid pain enough, if I can have a big enough house and the good stuff, then I'll be happy. And is it true? No. That's not where happiness comes from. I have a friend who works with the 0.1% folks, and they're not happy. They're anxious as hell. They don't have enough money. They're not secure. And why they're not secure is that money can't make us secure. Because we all have beating hearts that could stop in a heartbeat. We all have partners who could betray us, or children who could get sick, or or the really big one could come and we live on a razor's edge of impermanence, and so there isn't security. And so we can, however we try to get it, unless we're turning in the direction of spirit and freedom, then it doesn't work. So I gave a talk on impermanence, this elegant teaching from the Buddha, which is look with the most carefully refined and clarified consciousness you can, and see if you can find anything that lasts. The hypothesis is no, but is it true? And then there was the talk on dukkha, on unsatisfactoriness, on how we want to experience, I finally arrived. And we get that sometimes for a few seconds. And then another need or desire comes up. Or even in the midst of our greatest pleasures, there's always a certain nagging, how can I get this again? Or maybe this won't last. And then, so what I'm speaking of here are the three characteristics of existence. Impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, or Ruth put it so colorfully, Dalink, there is always a leak in the canoe. It's a beautiful sunny afternoon, you're with your beloved, you're going here, you're going there, and the damn canoe leaks, or there's ants, or you know how it is. It's finally we're going out for dinner, and oh crap, I have a headache. Or the restaurant's closed, or there's always something. Or everything's great, but it's just not, the conversation doesn't work, or something. So then there's this third characteristic of existence, which is really profoundly misunderstood usually. Let's see if I can do it justice. Worldview. Isn't it remarkable how that works? I knew that I had a certain order I wanted to go through things here today, and I knew just then I missed a piece, and then I paused, and then it appeared. How the hell does that happen? I have no idea. No idea. It just pops in. Weird. So the worldview piece is this. I went through somebody training. You went through somebody training. A lot. Some of it actually reflected who you are, and some of it was a layer on by the school system or by your parents, or who could tolerate certain parts of you or not tolerate parts of you. Part of my somebody training was growing up in a Catholic Baptist family. My father was not practicing. But I grew up in a theistic, God-based worldview. And though I had a bit of a trauma at my first communion. I was busy dealing with the trauma of, I'm going to get in trouble. It's the same one that I was talking about earlier. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to do something wrong. And I did my first communion, and there I was, little 5 years old at the church rail, and I did not believe that that was the body of Jesus Christ. It seemed too... I just couldn't do it. But I knew, I thought, everybody else believed it. The priest believed it, the nuns believed it, my mother believed it, I thought. And I couldn't tell anybody. And so I was lying at my first communion, and I knew that if I wasn't into it, I would go to hell. I discovered this as a sobbing outbreak during a therapy session. That had been stuck in there as a child because I was going to go to hell, and hell looked pretty bad. I mean, so there's a worldview, right? And we develop worldviews in order to make sense of life and also death. And one of the very common worldviews, though not universal, is that of God. That there is someone who created the earth, created the world, created the universe, and that if I'm good, I will, when I die, I will last, I'll go and be there and I'll last forever. In fact, in the tradition of my childhood, you mustn't cremate the body because the body's going to rise from the ground entire, in whole, and be taken up to be... My wife is reading a really interesting book about death customs, and there's this super high-tech place in Tokyo where they have, I don't know, 10,000 glass Buddhas. And when you come in, you have your card, and you swipe your card, and they're beautiful colors. It's really a gorgeous place. And the ashes of your loved one may be way up on the wall, but it turns white. And they have 10,000 people in a place, I don't know, a third the size of this room. Very efficient. I bicycle down through Riverview, and I say hi. I always I sing to the dead as I come through. It's really quite fun. Though one day I came zooming around the corner, singing at the top of my lungs, "Hello, Dad!" And there were some people standing there visiting. I thought, oh man, that's weird. But that's a strange use of land. I mean, it has saved it from development, but what an interesting thing, right? We we put a cement thing down, and then we put a casket in, and then we try to keep them. So these are worldview ideas, and they're very useful to some of us. The Buddha was alive in North India at the time when Brahmanism and Jainism were coming in. They weren't fully developed yet. So it was the idea of a creator God was somewhat new. He probably wasn't raised with that himself. So for some, at some times, it's comforting to have this because one knows, well, I believe in the right thing and the book, as my teacher Munindra said. Here is the book, and the book was written by God Himself or herself, or though usually feminine traditions don't have a book, they do it differently. A downside of that tends to be that since I have the book, the people of the other book are not holy. In fact, they may not be people. They may not be worthy of living. So we call that, Buddhists do the same thing, exactly. The notion of I will be reborn next lifetime, and I'll be reborn until something happens, and then I'll stop being reborn. That's a similar worldview idea that has to do with I'm safe, even though I am going to die. My something, the Buddhists wouldn't call it a spirit, but my something will go on. The Buddha took, not everything that comes down to us as Buddhism was necessarily what the Buddha taught, of course. And what I'm sharing with you is what I think the Buddha taught. There's strong scholarship to support it. When asked, is there a self? He remained quiet. When asked, is there not a self? He remained quiet. He said instead, are you suffering? Do you have dukkha? If you're experiencing dukkha, why not study it? And when you study it and get quiet and develop a mind that can really perceive it deeply, why not then observe what's causing it? And notice if it's craving, wanting things to be a certain way. And then why not notice if there's relief? Notice if the dukkha goes away. And along the way, maybe it'll become clear what your place in the universe actually is. Not as a belief, but as a direct experience. I just have a funny thought. Uh-oh, you've jinxed it. The next thought isn't coming. Funny. Superstition, isn't that funny? So I want to come back to this. There's a very wise, intelligent, modern translator of the Buddhist teachings, Ajahn Thanisaro, and he sat here actually. He said this here, which is, I've already said it, but I want to reiterate it, that don't take anatta as a doctrine. Take it as a strategy. And so, who am I? Am I this body with its sense doors and vision? And am I this? Or this body is in absolutely integrated, intimate experience with the world. Seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, and ideas. And that intimacy creates some pleasure, some displeasure, and something that's neither of those. And that's what pushes me through the world, right? The Buddha called it feeling. It's what kept us alive as mammals and keeps us alive as mammals. We move toward the pleasant and we move away from the unpleasant. Is that who I am? Do I have to move away from every unpleasant sensation? Do I have to move toward every pleasant one? Could I perhaps have greater freedom if I develop some capacity to bear the unbearable? Hence, sitting in meditation. Doesn't mean I can't have pleasure, but can I observe the phenomenon of pleasure and realize, number one, this is not going to do it. And number two, it's so fleeting. Remember, there's a beautiful William Blake couplet. She who kisses the joy she who binds, it's he, but I'm changing it. She who binds to herself a joy, does the winged life destroy? She who kisses the joy as it flies, lives in eternity's sunrise. I have to keep it. Or, oh, wow, this is beautiful. Look at this pleasure. This is grand. When phenomena occur, we create meanings out of them. Like you look at this and you say, this is a flower, or this is a desk, or this is a guitar, or this is specifically a 12-string guitar, or this is my partner, this is my house. So we create meaningful structures, perception. We create perceptions. Are those who we are? Are those who you are? I mean, they're quite changeable. Many people look at our present regime in the White House and they perceive something very desirable. Finally, at last. Others look and see, oh no, this is a catastrophe. What's happening there? Is there no objective reality? Or are we all creating a reality? We're all creating a meaning. That's perception. It's conditionable. And then all of the mental formations, the thoughts, the history, the value choices we've made, the mental, all the mental stuff. Is that who you are? I've had another step of freedom from something that I've dragged with me since early in my childhood, with this, my dad and whatever else that stood for. It's softened a bit. Was that who I am? Those limitations, were they? No, apparently not. And then consciousness itself. That which we have no idea where it comes from. We open our eyes and there's seeing, or we shrug our shoulder and there's sensation, there's knowing of that sensation. And this consciousness blossoms. Is that who we are? Where do we hang our hat? And so this teaching is eminently useful in that whenever we find ourselves conflicted or overly or deeply identified with something, we can pause, and I find the sitting practice so helpful for this, to pause and say, so, I'm really uptight about this. And usually we spend a lot of time trying to, why am I uptight? But I could just move to, I'm really uptight. Oh, wait, here's where I feel it in the body. And look at these stories that the mind is creating. Are these myself? Or are these the conditioning, the universe unwinding? And maybe I don't need to do anything about most of them, maybe all of them. Maybe they just come into being and will disappear, and I don't need to be in fighting with them. Which makes the connection to the newcomers. It was really nice to be with probably a dozen people this morning, from 9 to 10, once a month. First Sunday I do that. Something I always say, and I think it's really important, is when you come to meditating, most of us have a worldview belief that if I'm meditating correctly, I will be in bliss. Right? If I'm doing it right, if this is the right tradition for me, if this has been properly taught, if I'm finally over being such a bad person, when I sit down to meditate, it'll be like it was on the last day of the retreat. There actually is a risk to having a very deeply concentrated, spacious, open meditation, because I want it again. Good. There was an experience I had at a retreat center, Cloud Mountain, north of Portland, 20 years ago. I was in the middle of a very awful, painful divorce, and I was in a lot of pain, a lot of anxiety, and I was out walking. There used to be some stairs; they're gone now, but there were some stone stairs, and I was out walking up the stairs, and from one step to the next, the mind went into laser-like concentration and quiet. Whoa. This is cool. Yes. Effortless. And I went up the hill, and then I had my walking spot up there. I'd been to hundreds of times, and I walked back and forth for about an hour. And then it was time to sit again. The bell rang. I walked down very mindful. I went in and sat for an hour, just like a laser. And the thought came in, now don't be attached to this. Right? No, I'm not attached. Fine. And then it was lunch, so I went to lunch, knowing that it would be there when I got back after lunch. Gone, right? Of course it was gone. What did I do next? Yes. I went back to the stairs. And I knew, it's like, this is really stupid, Robert, but maybe that stair, my right foot coming up, back, up. Funny. So, the worldview notion that when I meditate, it'll be quiet and calm and concentrated and delicious, that's one of the things that stops people. Because I must be doing it wrong, or I'll never learn it, there's something wrong with me. There's a very different worldview, purpose, meaning, which is, when I meditate, my intention is to be present with whatever's here. My intention is, I have sort of an image, it's like that image there, actually, that batik. I bought that in 1971 on a shop wall in Benares. And I saw it at the time, I was like, yes, this is it. It's moving kind of back and in and out and open into mindfulness, so that whatever's happening is noticed as, oh, that's what's happening. This is a mind which is freaked out. This is a mind which is very concentrated. This is a mind which is really dull and feels stupid. And this is a mind that's hung over. This is the mind in sickness. People often say to me, I couldn't meditate because I was sick. What else are you going to do when you're sick? Right? When you get to that point where you can't watch TV, you can't listen to the BBC News one more time, and you just have to give up and be, I'm really sick. This is what sick feels like. There are so many millions of people on the earth feeling this right now. I'm in such good company. And this isn't a mistake, because sickness is normal. So to bring to our meditation a different worldview, which is, my intention is to accept things as they are. Doesn't mean I won't do something to correct it, if I can, but when it's like this, it's like this. And so you can come to your meditation seat it's taking refuge in the Dharma, with great ease in a way, which is, okay, whatever's happening, I will accept it. And I'll be conscious. Which of course runs right up against craving, right? It's unpleasant, so I want to change it. So we're right in the middle of the Four Noble Truths every time we sit down. So Anatta, one last loop. Lots and lots of people hear that teaching, and then they struggle with it intellectually. Well, do I have a self or not have a self? What about this teaching? Why bother? It wasn't taught that way, and it's not a help. And the little droplet, here's how I make sense of it. We come into this world. We come out of this universe. We don't come into it. We are it. And it, for right now, did this. And it's pretty amazing. And it continues to do this until it doesn't. And so some people often get involved with, I have a self. I don't want to give up myself. No one ever asked us to give up ourselves. In fact, we work throughout our whole lifetimes developing a more and more functional ego. That's another one of the crazy translations. Meditation isn't about getting rid of your ego. The ego is the executive structure in consciousness. But identifying with it is an issue. Taking, this is me. So, how exquisite. There is a remarkably developed self. which is capable of relating to other selves, which is capable of bringing more love into the world and more compassion into the world. And will it endure? Who knows after death? Don't know. But clearly, in this, it's here for this lifetime, and then it vanishes. And as Ram Dass, many of you probably know him, said, he said, I don't know about rebirth, but if acting kindly, lovingly, generously, open-heartedly in service will lead to a good rebirth, if that's what's on my plate, I want to do it. If those same things lead to tomorrow being happier and me being happier on the planet, I want to do it. So functionally, it becomes down to the same thing. I want to live as kindly, lovingly, generously as I can, and I want to restrain the things that I need to restrain, and I want to plant the seeds of a beautiful future, which are coming up tomorrow and the next week, and who knows about. But that's cosmology. Or not cosmology, what is it? That's something. Ideas. So, any question? Gosh, I left a few minutes. I'm impressed. Question, comment, complaint. It's elegant, isn't it? I think these ideas are so beautiful. They're not in contradiction to science. For those who believe in science, of course, that's another question. Please, come get the mic. And the microphone works by speaking into the top. And please say your name, if you will.
What'd you say?
Say your name.
Oh, my name's Shannon. And I was just wondering if this is more of a process or if it's an observance of what is not self. Like, is it a process of, like, the letting go of that which is not yourself, or I'm just trying to grasp it a little more?
See if I understand you. Nothing is ourself. And so the waking up to that is a process. And I find myself, well, I'm here, and I have this thing about my father coming up. And so there's this fantasy that I am now going to be in different relationship to this neurotic pattern. But the I that's making that decision is actually also vaporous, realistically. Does that make any sense? It's hard to talk about this. It is kind of the ultimate question. No wonder it's a bit hard. Any more? Follow-up question?
No follow-ups. I'm just still trying to grasp.
Yeah, don't. Give it up. Give it up. When you're all caught up in some mood, unpleasant mood particularly, just sit in the middle of it and realize, I don't have to do anything about this. It just hurts like hell. And it'll pass, as they do. Rod, with a tentative hand. We cut all the asparagus this morning, by the way. All the asparagus by the house, we done, and I just took it off now.
Okay. One of the things that came to mind for me when you were talking was the word borders. It's a word we've chosen to meditate on this week for our KM group. And when I was meditating this morning, I was imagining my breath is actually oxygen coming into my lungs and feeding my body, but it's actually oxygen coming into my sinuses too and feeding my head. And I'm thinking, well, where's the border in that? The topic was border. And I think most people, we were thinking of interpersonal borders and the whole issue of what's appropriate borders between us. But I was just enjoying your topic, that really what the border is that's where I am, that point where there is no border. It's right there, and it's actually consciousness. That oxygen hits my sinuses, and then it feeds. Or maybe you have some thoughts on this, but there is consciousness. If I don't take in that breath or let it out, and maybe helping Shannon's question there a bit. What is this business of?
There's actually a marvelous book that we're reading in one of my classes right now called No Boundary by Ken Wilber that addresses this question. Where do we hold our boundaries? And where is it that we have these? I mean, there are some very strange boundaries that we keep. We call them international borders. They've always seemed weird to me. I'm kind of a transnational. I was born in Canada, I'm an American citizen, but I've traveled all over the planet and lived in different countries for years. And borders are kind of strange. Just like private property, it's very strange. And we believe in them. They're part of our worldview. But isn't it odd that if you're born on the other side of a particular southern border here, you don't deserve to be in this country because you weren't born here. It's a worldview thing. And so one of the deep meditation makes the borders, the boundaries, more and more permeable. And there are actually experiences in meditation where the boundaries go away completely. And where there is, even the boundary of having a self disappears. And there's just this mysterious, indescribable, non-experience, because there's no one there to experience it, that's common across spiritual traditions. Every spiritual tradition, every mystical tradition. They speak of it in different vocabularies. So true freedom, I think of Don Juan, Carlos Castaneda and Don Juan. He said, the Mother Earth, the Mother is so vast, I can't possibly hold her in my arms. The best I can do is to dissolve myself into her. So there's this polarity. I'm here and the world is there and you're there, or nothing to fear. So I don't know if that's a help, but it's a great book, No Boundary, though, very readable. Ken Wilber before he got really complicated. So, anyone? Oh, over there, please. Lovable. Yeah, hi, lovable. That's cool. I'm sure it's true.
I hope so.
Yeah.
My name is Gillian, and I have a question about the conflict between this idea of not self and the struggle around the fight that some of us have to occupy and stand for the rights of an identity. A queer identity or a trans identity or an identity that is not the dominant. And so trying to understand this, the idea of not self and letting go of the need for self and the need for identity. But how can you speak to the process of doing that when one's very identity, one's very way of being in the world is threatened, in danger?
Yeah. There's kind of a category error. This teaching isn't about developing a strong ego and taking our place in the world and I've talked over the years. I've talked with so many people. The difficulty with coming out, with being gay or lesbian over the last, we just barely came across that threshold. But the incredible agonies of, I'm this, but I'm not allowed to be this. I'm not allowed to be this by my own internal conditioning. And the same is true now in any of us that are, and that struggle to have a functional ego, self, is absolutely essential for our health and well-being. That's a different question from, what are my boundaries vis-a-vis the universe, in a way? And the more one, meditation is really about strengthening that capacity to become yourself. Let me finish one more thought. From Carl Jung, he coined the term individuation, and that we individuate through our lives. And he said in the last year or two of his life, if he could go back, if he had search and replace, which he didn't then, but he would have said it this way: if I had search and replace, I would go back and change in all my writings, I would change that term individuation into personality specificity. That our task is to become the personality that we are, fully, specifically. And to really become that doesn't mean we can't simultaneously be realizing, oh, it's all vaporous. I'm part of this mysterious universe. They're not mutually exclusive. They're actually mutually inclusive. The more we can individuate, the more we can become transpersonal. Great question. Thank you. So, thanks for listening. Golly. Hope you had a good time. I did. And I hope this is really useful and that it stimulates practice for you and a connection with yourself and also with others. So we have the kids coming in now for our final closing. It'll take just a few minutes, and please stay. And then there's goodies. Coffee, tea. And anyone who would like to come in and be with the inner sanctum, it's fun in here.
Excuse me.
Eric.
Here, let's sit over here so that we can sit with Laura so that you guys can
Thank you, those of you that joined us on the net. Very lovely. Oh, I'm going to sit there. Hi.
Hey.
Are we milking a cow? Not yet. We're milking a cow. Have you ever milked a cow?
Yeah.
I did once. It was weird. Did you know that milk comes from cows? It does not come in a jar or a bottle. You knew that? Oh, good. Goats too. That's true. But that makes it goat milk, right? Yes. Let's hold hands, if we can. You okay? Holding hands? All right. So please give the hand on your right a little squeeze. How fortunate to have another hand to hold. In the vastness of this universe, imagine there's a hand to hold. And the left hand, give that one a little squeeze. And what if you were to wish this person well? What would you wish? A bowl of ice cream is whispered. Any flavor?
Vanilla.
Vanilla?
Ice cream. Cereal ice cream.
Okay. So, as we can wish this person on the left and right well, so can we wish ourselves well. These minds are sometimes pretty habituated not thinking well of ourselves. But it's just the choice away. Why not? Think a blessed thought for yourself. And then extending this to all beings, to our brothers and sisters of the air, the earth, and the waters. To all beings. Let's not leave out any humans. Humans against whom we feel harsh feelings or frightened thoughts. Humans who are of our own proclivities. Remembering that we are all one mysterious, indescribable phenomenon called life. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Are you impatient?
No.
Okay, well, wait a while. Here you go.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings crazy town. I do.
Yay, thank you. And now the ancient ritual. Everyone, make a wish. You got a wish? All clear? Do you know what you're wishing? Don't tell us. Secret. You got a wish? You ready? All right, you ready? You have to get in position. No hair catching on fire. Very good. 1, 2, 3, blow. Yes, we did it. Thank you all for coming, and may you have a blessed week. See you soon, and may we all be loving and compassionate and mindful of ourselves.